Hello, hello, and welcome to this presentation, Norns Walking Among Us, with me, Daniela Simina. And this is a presentation that I gave at the Mystic South Conference 2026. Here is the recording. Those of you who were not able to make it to the conference can still enjoy the content that I would love to share. About the presenter, a little bit about myself. I am a pagan of North Germanic and Irish persuasions. As a heathen, as a North Germanic pagan, I identify as Alpha true rather than Asa true because my primary connections are the hidden people, the Huldufok, and the Landweiter, the land spirits, and in a more expanded sense of the word, the elf folk. I'm a teacher and an author. I authored and co-authored several books, among which 3 titles are relevant for our discussion today. One of them is Orlog, Yesterday and Today, The Shapings of the Norns. I'm the 3rd author on this book, and it is relevant because it delves deeply into the topic of Norns. Who are they? What are they believed to be? How do we experience the Norns in our everyday life as modern people? And a lot more about fate and the concept of fate weaving, this interplay of fated set things and the free will of the individual, the agency. The second book is A Fairy Path, the memoir of a young fairy seer in training. That would be me. This is an autobiographical work, and it is relevant to our topic in that it looks at the work of ritual practitioners. And again, this is not work of fiction. I grew up in Romania with my grandmother, who was a very skilled, highly reputed medicine woman. So I saw how a number of things are being carried out in folk healing, magical medical approaches. So you will see as we go further on with this presentation why this book is relevant. And the third book, which is not here, but it will appear somewhere else in this slide, in the slideshow, that one is named the Rune Spirits, an animistic approach to rune working. And that is supposed to appear, I mean, it's scheduled, not to suppose, it will for sure be published in 2027. More about it when we'll go to the bibliography and resources. So this is me, this is my work, and this is our presentation today. Myths and Midgard. What is this presentation in the end? What is all about? This presentation is predicated on the argument that myths, lore, and life in Midgard both mirror and shape, influence each other, reciprocally. And I invite you to think of the following: members of a community, any community, small, large, live their lives in according to beliefs they hold, both individual beliefs and then the bigger shared ones. Those beliefs, in their turn, are rooted into commonly shared mythology, into lore, but also personal experiences that community members have. But with time, change is inevitable. Time is change. And as changes occur at both individual and group levels, myths and beliefs are also reshaped. And then it's like a perpetual cycle. Then the newly emerged myths begin to influence the existing lore, the customs, the social norms, prompting further changes and shifts. This is a continuum along which new stories grow out of old ones, and the new stories shape the current worldview just as the old myths and stories from the past shaped what we experience today. in our current worldview and beliefs. Ritual practitioners, their roles and actions echo the roles and actions of mythical counterparts. What does it mean? If we look at magical mystical practices, they do follow along the same continuum, meaning that ritual practitioners, their roles and actions are mirrors of the counterparts that we read about, we learn about from mythology and older lore. In this vein of thought, Spey Connor, Spey Mother, Volor, or the old seers and magical practitioners of our times, they do emulate to various degrees through their actions the mythical and powerful Norns. Which takes us to the question, okay, but who are the Norns? In Norse myth, the earth and the sky are made from the body of the slain giant Ymir, so it's a primordial sacrifice. Völuspá, a poem in the larger collection known as the Poetic Edda. All of this is in your bibliography and resources. All the titles, all the names are there where this information comes from. So the Völuspá, this poem, which is part of the Poetic Edda, informs us about three girls appearing once the world was shaped from the body of Ymir and things started to kind of settle into place. These are not any kind of girls, but the Norns themselves, and it is implied in the text that they are actually much older than the world created from Ymir's body, and perhaps older than Ymir, the giant himself. The Eddaic material informs us that the Norns have a say in everything, and I'll quote from the book on Orlog. Nornir lay out the various premises for things to happen. They call into being the protagonists, will engender the fates created by them. And as the Norse myth tells, protagonists' actions lay the foundation for future events to unfold, which is, according to the myths, a new layer of fate sunk into Urdabrunnar, the well of earth. The name Earth has the additional meaning fate, which means that Urdabrunnar is not any mythical well, but a repository of fate with its multiple layers of causality and projected futures. And this is from Orlok, the shapings of the norms, cited with permission from the authors, the other two co-authors. Now, in art, Norns are usually shown, depicted, represented spinning, equipped with spindles and distaffs and caught in the act of creating threads of lives of events. But this image is actually borrowing from Greek mythology, where the Moira, the goddesses of fate, spin, measure, and cut lengths of thread, allotting thus people their lifespan. Both Norns and More are involved with fate shaping, but the similarities between them stop at that. The sources we have for the Norse mythology inform that there are different kinds of Norns. Their number varies, and they have various ways, which is not actual thread spinning, to lay out, decide, make decisions regarding the fate of humans and fate of events. Speaking of kind of Norns and how many are they, in fact, the poem Völuspá mentions Skuld, which is one of the three Norns, as one among the Valkyries. In the poem Fafnismal, Norleif Fafnir, it's stated that from very different tribes, I think the Norns came. They are not of the same kin. Some spring from the Aesir, some from the elves, some are the daughters of Dvalin. And I'm using the translations from the Poetic Edda by Carolyn Larrington. So that's where my translation of, not my translation, the translation that I'm offering here come from. And again, everything is given in the bibliography and resources page. Okay, now how do the Norns actually manifest their intentions and plans? Because as we saw, the Norns representing as spinning with, spindle and distaff or spinning wheel, that's a borrowing. Since we have a variety of Norns, it is logical to consider them employing also different modalities to manifest their intentions. And thus implied that their ways of shaping destinies are done in different ways. So it's more than one way to carry to fruition, bring to fruition one intention. The Norns sitting by the well of earth, all the art is free domain, and is shared with permission, the permission that's granted to free domain to use art for non-commercial purposes. So here it is. The Norns sitting by the well of earth are shown in the Voluspa, inscribing words, I presume, and it is presumed, on slips of wood. And you see in this picture bits of wood with various markings inscribed on them, and they shape this, they carve these symbols on slips of wood. Urd, one is called, so one of the Norns is called Verdandi, another. They carved on wooden slip, Skald is the third. They laid down laws. They chose life for the sons of men, the fates of men. This is Voluspa, the Poetic Edda, Carolyn Larrington translation. As I mentioned, I guess already. Now, what does this have to do with spinning? I really like the idea of spinning, but I think spinning faith, like spinning stories, but I think of spinning, the act of spinning thread, as a metaphor. Many of us may be familiar with the idiom spinning tales or spinning stories, which implies using words to spin narratives. In the case of Norns, such narratives are threads, which then intertwine to become fabric of destiny or destinies. Other Norns, Valkyrie-like, appear in the poem Daradar which is included in Njal saga, also in your resources. In this poem, an eyewitness actually tells how he saw Valkyrie Norns shaping the outcome of the Battle of Clontarf. So this is a real historical event, Clontarf, 1014, near Dublin in Ireland. And here the Norns manifest their intent through the act of fabric weaving. And I'll share a little bit from the poem, just to give you an idea of what this fabric meaning, because it's also a metaphor. So the Norns speak as they weave this piece of fabric. See, warp is stretched for warriors' fall. Lo, weft in the loom, 'tis wet with blood. Now fight foreboding. With war's alarms our warp blood-red, our weft corpse blue. This woof is ye woven with entrails of man. This warp is hand-weighted with the heads of the slain. Spears blood besprinkled for spindles we use. Our loom iron bound and arrows our reels. With swords for our shuttles this war woof we work. So weave we, weird sisters, our war-winning woof. So they're deciding, basically they're weaving the tapestry of the battle and the outcome of the battle, war-winning woof. So the whole setup, the whole loom is intended to, as a scene, to enact the battle and its outcome, war-winning. So they take sides in the battle and are winning, are weaving the fate of the winning implicitly the losing party. So this is the Daradarlios Nial saga, all cited, quoted in the bibliography and the resources consulted. The words uttered by the Valkyrie Norns weave together or blend together with the act of weaving. And so this is how they shape the outcome of the battle. But not in the end, the battle, this battle and any other battle for that matter, is fought from individuals, is fought by individuals. So battle is not an abstract concept. People fight against each other and eventually kill one another. So the outcome of such a battle involves everyone, affects everyone involved, from individuals to small communities. Those people don't live in isolation. They have families, they have villages, they have small tribes, clans, bigger tribes, clans they come from. It affects, the effect spreads, ripples to the level of kingdoms and the world at large. One power, political, military power overtaking another. This is bound to shape, to influence somehow the fate of the neighbors and what's happening in the world at large. Thus is the power of magic and of any magic, as we shall see. Ritual specialists now and then. Let's take a quick look at ritual specialists from the past. In the Flatyer book, a man tells his own story involving a seeresses. When the storyteller, so this is a first-hand account, when the storyteller was born, his father inviting 3 spaewives, seers, to both foretell what is seemingly predestined, kind of announce the will of the Norns for the baby, but also favorably influence the baby's future. So notice here, yes, we acknowledge what the Norns laid out for this newborn, the future of this newborn, but they're also expected to influence, at least to some extent, the fate that's already shaped by the Norns. So in that capacity, the Spey women themselves act as replicas or reflections, not replicas, but reflections of the bigger, higher level Norns. 2 among the Spey wives predict that the baby will become a handsome, brave, and lucky man, which is indeed a very pleasing prophecy. The 3rd series, probably envious that she was not invited to speak, prophesies that the baby will only live as long as the candle burning beside his cradle lasts. This series gets, so she's grabbed and just pushed out of her seat. And the older women among the 3 mitigate the outcome by snuffing out the candle and giving it to the mother to preserve it carefully and never light it again. The parallel between the Spaewives and the Norns is explicit in the conclusion of the story, which I'm going to quote. After that, the seeresses went away and tied up the youngest Norn. So the person giving this account refers to the seeresses, even to the 3rd one, the youngest, and the one who spoke least inspired, refers to her as a Norn, and took her away. And my father gave them good gifts when they left. So the father is in the end pleased with the outcome, is happy that the baby's misfortune was mitigated by the other Norns and gave them good gifts. So this is from Flatyer book. Flatyer book has not been translated officially. So this text has been translated by Ben Wagoner. And there is the work from which is the quotations are taken is in the list of resources at the end of this presentation. Okay, ritual specialists then and now. Now let's talk about, excuse me, ritual specialists of now. And here I am, a sense of humor, me doing divination, reading. That was at a psychic fair some time ago. So we look at the rituals, ritual specialists from the past. Now it's only fair that we take a look at ritual specialists of now, from the present. So just wherever you are listening to this presentation, think of yourself or look around. Who is practicing divination? Yourself? Someone you know? Do you yourself consult intuitive readers? Those among us who read for others, when we speak out the array of possibilities revealed in a reading, we plant a seed. I'm going to pause here for a second and give you take my perspective on reading and readings. I don't come at this from the premises that whatever I'm saying is going, it's set in stone. Rather, it indicates, it shows the potential, the existing potential within a situation, where the situation where things are when I'm reading, that can open up multiple ways, multiple possibilities to take action. And then it's, using common sense and ponder, further inquire what action is the best to be taken. So in this vein of thought, it's not that if my runes or my cards are showing that something, quotes unquote, bad is going to happen, it doesn't mean that is fated. It's good that I know about it so I can think intelligently on how to avoid it, how to deflect, to mitigate, if such things will happen. On the other hand, if something great is foretold or showed as a possibility, that's a possibility. And unless the person, the querent, or myself, if I'm reading for myself, is not going to take action, practical steps in the direction of fulfilling, doing what needs to be done, it doesn't matter how beautiful, great, gorgeous the outcome predicted is not going to come to pass, because the free will of the individual didn't kick in. Yeah, the potential is there. It's like the Norns giving out fabric, but then it's up to the individual. What do you want to weave? They give out the thread, and then it's up to the individual. What are you going to weave with that thread? A little bit like that. So, back to our presentation. So, as I said, when we read, we plant a seed, and that seed thought begins to grow into plans, strategies, visions of future action take shape in the mind of the querent. As I said, some act, some don't on that vision. When we read, we seek to inform and hopefully empower the querent through the guidance that we offer. And then farther down the road, the querent's action or inaction generates an outcome to which we have contributed through the words we spoke first. How is this not like the Norns? Now, who's working magic? Think for a moment, how do you craft your charm or spell? If you craft charms or spells, or if you utter prayers that are not like read from a book, if you come up with your own, how do you do that? There's no right or wrong answer here. There's no correct way. The correct way is the one that resonates with you, comes from you, feels right, and in the end delivers a good, tangible outcome. So, for the future, you may or may not want to follow the template I will describe here, but typically there is a format, and it is quite evident in old grimoire materials and leech books, the leech books being magical medical manuscripts. If we look at all charms as they are recorded, they tend to follow a certain format. They have a historiola, and the historiola gives, as the name said, like a little bit of history, which I'm going to refer to Second Merseburg charm, which speaks of Balder and Odin and other deities riding through the woods, and Balder's horse trips and sprains his foot. So that's the historiola. It gives you the background, like what happened. And then there is a development. There is praising or extolling the virtues of the power or agent invoked for help. Now, the historiola goes into saying that all the gods, present gods, pitch in. So this is, and they have all these powers and abilities which they put to work to help Baldur's horse recover. And the last line in that is, and Woden said the best he could. So it's extolling the virtues the best he could. Now, it is understood from mythology that Woden or Wotan or Woden can do a lot. So he did the best he could. And then it describes, the charm goes on describing the path of action, which it tells that um, wound, the damage should heal, bone to bone, skin to skin, blood to blood, so shall be done. And then it states and it ends with stating the final outcome of the, in this case, the horse healing, the damage being completely repaired. And then there are recommendations. You say the charm a number of times, or you just say it once, or it is oftentimes accompanied by various ritual gestures, which very much echoes, as we'll see, the action of the Nornir themselves. So, as I said, each of the steps, usually in the charms, they're not described always in the magical medical manuscript, but we can infer by comparison to the Daradarlio, the song in which the Norns were, the poem in which the Norns were weaving, and it's the act of weaving, and the words accompanying that symbolic weaving of the fabric of war and victory. In the same way, when we deal with charms, whether those in manuscripts or the ones that we make for ourselves to use, we can think of different ritual gestures, symbolic gestures to incorporate. Sometimes only some of the steps are accompanied by gestures or action. And think of these as mixing ingredients, burning herbs, fumigating a space or a person, sticking needles into a puppet, inscribing with symbols like the Norns are doing on those slips of wood. Also, one or more steps could merge. The separation isn't always clear. And in fact, these are elements that connect. So we care less about the structure and the separation of steps. We care more about how they connect to give the charm its structure and organize its contents. But in the same time, what we care most about is the outcome. So the steps may not be always neatly separated. They may be fused, merged, but they're always there, explicit or implied. The other example that I have here is Laknunga, the 9 herbs charm, where I'm going to refer to the parts where mugwort is called forth to help. And it goes something to the effect of, remember, mugwort, what you promised at the Great Proclamation. We do not have details about what that Great Proclamation was or is, but we know that mugwort, the herb, holy herb, promised to deliver notice also the animistic approach here. Mugwort has promised. So mugwort is not just a weed. Mugwort is a person with agency and made promises. And it's also implied that mugwort has the power to carry to completion, to see to completion the promises that it made. So remember, mugwort, what you promised to the great proclamation. Una, you're called the mightiest of herbs. Yeah, historiola, the development and praising. So you promised something in the past, you're there, you made some great promises. Una, you are called the wisest or the strongest. I'm not, this is not a quotation, is me telling the charm as I typically use it. You have power over 3 and 30. You have power over ill magic and disease. You have power over the evil that is roaming the land. So it's extolling the virtues of and the powers of the agent called for to help. Here, this is just a bit of the charm that I'm using when I'm working with mugwort. There are other herbs, as the charm is named, 9 herbs. So expect to find 9 references to 9 herbs and extolling the virtues of each in the same manner as I spoke about mugwort. But here, because it's just a fragment of the charm, we do not see the rest of the steps, like describing the path of action. Okay, I have the historiola, mugwort, you spoke at the great proclamation, mugwort, you're this amazing great herb, and you have all these virtues and powers, which means that it's left up to me, the individual, to describe the path of action, which can be mugwort, help me, or, chase away, or cleanse, or so I'm going to ask mugwort to do something and state the intended outcome, and maybe adding a little bit more praise and expression of gratitude, which is not about flattery, is about honest and genuine gratitude and praising of virtues and powers. Because if I reach out to mugwort, it means that I really, really need that kind of help, and I really, really trust that mugwort can deliver it. Otherwise, why would I even call on mugwort? And this applies to any other plant ally, any other herb, for this matter. So we have 2 examples: Merseburg charm and Laknunga 9 herbs charm. Now it's your turn. If you're watching this as a recording, then pause, take 5 minutes, and come up with a charm. Think of a charm that you would like to create toward a specific purpose. Think of a charm that you're using often, even if it's not your own creation, but think of something that you're using often and try to identify these elements of historiola development, describing the path of action and stating the intended outcome. So 5 minutes to just work on this, and then we'll be back and we'll continue from where we left our conversation. Okay, here we are back. Read again the charm to yourself. If it's something of your own creation, notice how does it feel. Does it feel wishy-washy, or it's really packing, a punch? If it's something that you're using because you read it somewhere and you learned that you like it, I have plenty of those myself. How does it feel? Maybe ponder, why do you like it? Is it really a deep resonance that you feel when you're working with that charm, or you just trust the person who created it, and you're using it, reciting it, employing it based on the facts that it comes from a source of authority. So just sit with it for a moment. Maybe conclude to maybe reworking some charms, creating some charms, adapting some charms that you have from different sources, adding your own personality and your own energy to those to reshape them, to really pack a punch and deliver more in the direction that you need. Norns and us, because that was, if you remember, the premises for the conversation, Norns walking among us. Let's review a little bit. What are the Norns doing or said to be doing? They use words to spin threads, again, metaphorically, spin threads for stories. But that's exactly what we did and what you did when you laid out that charm, when you just wrote it down or remembered it or kind of work with it 5 minutes ago. Each story and protagonist's actions ripple out and interact with the ripples generated by other stories and their protagonists, which lead to a larger scale impact. Think of the Dara Darliot, um, the poem with the Norns weaving an outcome. Again, it was a battle. That battle shaped individual destinies. Some died, left families behind. Some um, were the victors. They went back home with spoils of war and a lot of glory. Some got promotions, moved up in the military ranks or the courts of their kings. Some were made slaves. So that charm that the Nornir made affected, had a big impact on individual and collective destinies. And that in turn, as I already mentioned, rippled out. The families of those who were taken up into slavery, they had hardship to endure after that because their men, their people were taken away. So there's fewer of them to carry out work in the field and care for the community in general. The families of those who were promoted or turned as victors, they were impacted positively by the spoils of war and the wealth that was brought to the family and distributed in the small community. So notice that there's no action that just happened to one person or to one place. Everything ripples. The energy of it ripples, but also the consequences, the factual consequences, um, also rippled. Now, please think by analogy to your own charm, how you and I are mirroring the actions of Norns. Your charm, my charms, whether made by ourselves. The important thing is that we spoke it, we engaged with it. So our charm is in fact a story. It's a linear progression of events, a thread that runs through our intent, stringing together elements from the past, assuming we start with a historiola, elements from the past to elements which are now in the present and to the future. And once we're done writing or speaking our charms, what do? We just let go of it. And this is very similar to the way Norns act. They write the outcomes on slips of wood, which then lay, they toss into the well. Or in Dara Darliot, back to the weaving Valkyrie Norns picture, they tear apart the loom and the fabric they're spinning. Once they're done speaking the thing into being, their charm, their intent into being, they tear everything apart and just let go. Now it's out there, and it will roll, it will manifest. So whenever we engage in magical work, we emulate the workings of the Norns, at least to some extent. And the question is, why does this matter? Well, part of the answer is are on this page, on the slide. Namely, when we engage in divination or work magic, we emulate or attempt to emulate the actions of the Norn, in that we are trying to elicit outcomes in consensus realities, reality by stringing words, combining words and symbolic gestures. We cannot talk about the Norns and about the work that we do that emulates the work of the Norns without touching on free will and predestination, because that begs the question: are people reduced to puppets, or can they also function as agents of change? What's the good of trying to move things in a certain direction if their course has been predetermined? Are lives and events predetermined down to the smallest detail, or is there room for, within this preset framework, for humans to exercise also their own agency and actually influence how things play out? From the saga material and from other material, lore stories, we learn that one of the roles ritual practitioners fulfill is mitigating circumstances and propitiate specific outcomes. Let's look again at our examples and some more. Remember the story in the Flatiar book. The head of the household is enraged by the third vulva because she attempts to speak into being a tragic future for the baby. The man's expectation of a good prophecy has the character of a demand. I'm giving you gifts in exchange for a promise of a good future for my son. This is made very clear in the text. It doesn't come across fully from just the little bit of a citation that I used, but in the whole text, which is, again, I have links to it in the resources. In the text, that comes across very, very clear. He has expectations. So obviously, he gets very angry when he doesn't get the outcome, or he seems not to be getting the outcome that he wants. The man's reaction makes it plenty clear that he believes in the power of the three valor to speak fate into being, just like the mythical Norns are believed to do. The ill-prophesizing woman is stopped in her tracks. She's not allowed to carry out her, harmful intervention. She's yanked out of her seat, and then she's threatened. Then the other two volure mitigate what she has said by metaphorically spinning an additional thread, which then they weave into the story. Notice that the two well-meaning volure cannot undo the fate the third vulva laid out. What was spoken cannot be taken back. So this is set. But they can come up with a practical solution. If the baby's life will only last for as long as the candle burned, then fine. Snuff the candle and keep it somewhere safe so no one lights it again, ever. In the saga of Egil the Red, in the saga of Eric the Red, I'm taking that back. That's a different story. Egil saga, it's a different story. There is a saga, Egil, Eric Saga Rauda, the saga of Eric the Red. A vulva, well known her prophecy skills, is invited to help a small community navigate a particular difficult time. Her name is Thorbjörg Little Vulva, and my personal belief is that she's not just expected to tell people, hey, there's famine, it's going to last for some time, but there's no telling how this will end for you guys. She can't just come up with such a thing. That would be demoralizing and, speaking into being such faith. Because again, communities, people believe that whatever the Velu speak becomes fated. So she cannot bluntly tell such a thing, but she cannot lie to them either and deliver overly optimistic yet unfounded news, because that would ruin her reputation. And this woman has a very, very strong reputation. Somewhere in the text of the saga is told that little of what she told didn't come to pass. So she's well known for the accuracy of what she says and for her power of influencing, reshaping, tweaking outcomes that otherwise seem quite bleak. My personal understanding is that there are expectations placed on Thorbjörg to both get information from spirits, because this is how the session, the Seder session is described. She goes into trance, she needs the help from the community, needs certain songs, Varlokur, to be sung. And she goes into trance to consult spirits, and the spirits come forth and talk to her. Now, my belief and understanding is that she don't just goes there to talk to spirits to get information, but also to negotiate a favorable outcome that she could communicate to those who invited her. And we're seeing over and over in Völuspa, where the vulva, the old vulva, and this is what the picture actually depicts here. Odin himself goes to talk to this vulva, and she wakes up this ancient vulva that also seems to be alive way since the dawn of creation, and even prior to this. She saw basically the world coming into being, and she foretells some events for Odin, among which the death of his own son Baldur. But she also foretells, tells him about another son of Odin, a younger son of Odin, who will avenge Baldur, and that son also will play a critical role in the Ragnarok, when the worlds will come to an end. So, but that son is not born yet. So notice here the intertwining of prophecy and agency. So Odin, from that point on, is like, okay, I have to father that son, and it seems it has to be father in specific conditions or with specific person. I have to father that son, and he makes it like his mission from that point on to go and father his son, that son who will avenge Baldur, and also play a role in Ragnarok. In Daradar Ljóð, we saw how the Norns foretell, the future, lay out the future, but then the armies have to go and do battle, actually. If a truce is reached in the meantime, no battle is going to be carried out. There's going to be no winner, no loser. In Flateyr book, despite what the third Norn has predicted, so the really dim um, outcome for the gloomy outcome for the baby's future, the other two Norner have the ability to intervene and mitigate that. Yes, we cannot stop it. Okay, just make sure the candle doesn't burn to the end. Saga of Eric the Red, I just mentioned Thorbjörg little vulva. Yes, she's there. She's ready to prophesize. She's ready to, but people have to participate. They have to, and they have a little bit of a challenge to get the proper songs being sung, but they all have to participate. It's a communal effort in order to support Thorbjörg in her attempt to go and not only talk to spirits and find out what's next, but also to negotiate, mitigate for the outcome to be favorable in the long run for the entire community. So there's this interplay of free will and laid out stuff. In conclusion, can we recognize our work when we look at it, whether this work is self-serving or done to benefit someone else? Can we recognize this as aligning with the examples discussed today? From my point of view, yes. And in the light of all these, I would like to conclude that ritual practitioners known as Speakanner, Valor, or by any other names, whether you call yourself a magical practitioner, folk medicine person, witch, whatever the name, priestess, priest, whatever title or name you use, you apply to yourself. We all act as bridges between this world and the other, connecting cosmic. We act as connectors in between the cosmic and the mundane levels. Through speaking not faith, through speaking faith into being, and by prompting others to act, ritual specialists, magical workers perpetuate the cycles of faith making as a balancing act, while acting between what is predetermined and the free will of the individual. Through our words, through your words, through what you do, you prompt someone to act, or you convince yourself to take certain steps in a certain direction, and that action has ripples that affect other people and prompt other events to come into being. Ritual practitioners or workers of magic from among us, from the ancient past and into today, act as agents of balance between free will and predestination, in between the cosmic and mundane planes. I'll take a moment with the bibliography and resources. Here are all the works that have been considered, consulted, referred to uh, in this presentation. I mentioned that there is another book coming out, which is very, very relevant to the topic. And that book is Spirit of Runes. And it will publish in 2027, but you do not have to wait this long. This book is also, or like 95% of its contents, or 90% of its contents, is released weekly, in weekly installments, on the Pagan Collective blog. So if you go to the pagancollective.com and you have access to older issues, newer issues, this is a free publication. And you can go and find there the contents of the book as weekly installments, as weekly lessons on how to interact with runes as from an animistic perspective, how to work alongside or with runes from an animistic perspective, which is again very much tied into Norns and Nornir and charms, and making charms and making predictions about the future. So with this being said, I thank you very, very much for being here with me. And if you have any questions, I can be found on social media. I have a Facebook page, Daniela Simina author page. That's probably the best way to reach me. I'm on Instagram, Daniela Simina 1. I'm on TikTok. That's different, as Whispers in the Twilight. So ask questions and keep in touch. And once again, thank you very much.